You know what's worse than being in competition with other women? Not knowing that you are in competition with other women. When I got married, I was the ripe old age of 30. Oh my goodness. And I remember, telling my parents that my husband and I were engaged, and my dad making the comment of, well, it's about time because, in the group of girls that you went to church with and everything that we all grew up together, I was the last one getting married. And I remember him saying that like it was a thing, like it was a big deal. And to this day, 5 years later, it still does not sit well with me because one, the society that we live in, women and men are getting older or getting married at older ages. It's a fact. There used to be a time when women got married before they were women in their teenage years. And then, for the longest time, early 20s was a thing. And now the average American woman is getting married in her late 20s, early 30s. So, from that perspective, I was right on time. But also, just growing up as a preacher's daughter, growing up in a Pentecostal church, the way that churches in general talk so much about marriage as if it is you have to do this or bust type situation, that your life is not complete as a woman until you get married. And definitely as a woman, because for all of that talk of he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing, no one in churches is getting on to men who were in their 30s and 40s who are still single. But it's a problem when we talk about women. And the fact is that we are living longer than ever. We have more opportunities than ever. And it is time that we learn to take advantage of that. It is also time that we stop allowing people to make us feel guilty about whatever season of life that we are currently in. So, in today's episode of Christianish, we are going to talk about how to be okay with being single. Again, welcome to Christianish. My name is Keshia Rice, and this podcast is all for women who have Bibles but haven't figured out the boundaries part yet. And I am a dating coach, I'm a hypnotherapist. I help women learn how to uncover their unhealthy relationship patterns and also learn how to heal from those patterns so that they can have healthy, loving, fulfilling relationships, and in the context of this episode, to have them on your time when you are ready for them. So, this whole idea of acting like being single is a curse or it is something to be fixed, just like everything else in life, it's all about balance. There's nothing wrong with desiring a relationship. There's nothing wrong with desiring partnership. Again, I'm married. I think that marriage is a beautiful thing. There's so much to be said for having a romantic partner who is your best friend, who is your lover, who's your confidant, who is someone that you can depend on, someone that you can be team us with, someone who you know that this person has your back, and someone that you have a chance to, one, grow with, because nothing like being in a relationship to really uncover all of your triggers and to have a person to work through those things with. But also just knowing that you have this person to do life with and to grow with. We're dealing with a loneliness epidemic in the world right now. And having a partner can just mean so much. So, of course, I support women who desire romantic partnership. That's why I became a dating coach. But at the same time, there's so much to be said, again, for understanding your single season and making the most of it. One of my favorite Bible verses is Ecclesiastes 3 and 1. and you've probably heard it before. Even if you're not Christian, you've probably heard to everything there's a season. Like everything there is a time and place. So when it comes to this whole idea of learning to be okay with your single season, whether you are someone who has never been married or you are now in a secondary single season, so that means, you're divorced or you're widowed, it is understanding that you really have to learn to trust the timing for your life. I was in some serious relationships before my husband. And when I think back on those relationships now, and I think about the possibility of if I had been married to any of those men, I know without a shadow of a doubt that I would be divorced, right? And it's not because those men were necessarily horrible or because, you hear all the stories that if a relationship ends and it didn't go the way that you wanted it to, suddenly that person is a narc or they're terrible and all that. I dated men who were good men. At the same time, they weren't the right men for me. Our values didn't align, or the things that I wanted in life were not compatible with what they wanted in life, especially in terms of things like what I wanted for my career and my ambitions and being in a place where, I spent my 20s moving cities, changing cities, changing jobs in order to build up my career. And yeah, that definitely interfered with having a serious relationship and getting married because the men that I dated didn't want to move or didn't like the possibility of frequently moving. So, I had to make the conscious choice to, in my 20s, take my single season and focus on building my career. We all have priorities, and being able to make peace with that is so important. And again, being able to trust God's timing and understand that even if you desire something, that doesn't mean that right now is the best time for it. That is so important. Beyond that, let's talk about specifically 5 ways that you can be okay with being single. So, one is embracing gratitude. And I know it sounds so cliche, especially right now. This has been recorded in November of 2024, which means that we're getting very close to Thanksgiving. And you're going to hear so many messages about giving thanks and being grateful and showing gratitude. And if you're a self-development girly like me, then, you hear so much about journaling what you're thankful for. But gratitude is foundational. Just like there is balance between desiring a romantic relationship and also, being content in your single season, there is balance between, in general, wanting different things out of life and also having gratitude for where you are right now. And I promise you that if you spend some time sitting and thinking about it, you will find things that you can be grateful for right now. Even if it is just one thing, start with that one thing and learn how to be grateful for that because that creates a foundation. I'm always telling my clients what you appreciate appreciates, or what you focus on magnifies. And the best example I can give about this is if I were to tell you not to think about a pink elephant in a tutu, you would immediately picture a pink elephant in a tutu because that is how our brains work. So when we get these things implanted in our mind, positive or negative, they create these loops where it becomes the only thing that we see. Another example I can think of is when it comes to cars. When I got my most recent car, I drive a Toyota Corolla. And when I made the decision that I was going to get a Corolla, All of a sudden, Corollas were all I saw on the roads. Now, I live in the southeastern United States. People here love their SUVs and their trucks. So it's not like there was suddenly just an influence of Corollas, which is a small car, if you're not familiar. It's not like there's just an influence of those on the road because this is not a part of the country where people like small cars, right? But because that's where my mind was, that's what I was shopping for, all of a sudden I saw them everywhere. In fact, I have a white Toyota Corolla specifically. And it is funny because that I would not only see Corollas, but I would see white ones even now. The other day I was leaving my Pilates class and I kid you not, the parking lot, there was my car and I went to the wrong car because there were two other white Toyota Corollas in the parking lot. So when we focus on being grateful for what it is that we already have, we get more of it. And when it comes to dating and relationships, you're going to say, okay, well, I want to be in a relationship. I don't have one of those. So how can I focus on that and be grateful for it when I don't have it? You do have love in your life. You may have love from your family members, your parents love you, your siblings love you, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents. If you're not close with your family, you have love from your friends or you have self-love. You have the love for yourself. So be grateful for that. Start focusing on that and allow the love in your life to build upon that. So number 2 is in addition to embracing gratitude, you should also be embracing self-discovery right now. The fact that you are not in a relationship, in a partnership, means that you have more time to learn about yourself. You have more time to spend with yourself, to develop new hobbies, to read more books, to find more interest. My husband works out of town from time to time, and to some extent, that sucks. It would be great if he never had to work out of town and he could always be around. But one of the things that I found talking about gratitude is that when he is not around, I have more time to discover myself because I'm not worried about, wifely duties. I'm not worried about, checking in with him and making sure that he's good and all that. I can spend more time than, when he's around on reading, or I can, blast an audiobook because I'm not worried about him you know, like disturbing him watching TV or anything like that. I'm able to, find things that, try new foods that my husband wouldn't necessarily try. So being alone gives you all of these opportunities to learn things about yourself that you will not have as much time to do when you are in a relationship. Not saying that the learning stops, but again, once you're in a relationship, you have to adjust your priorities. You have to adjust your time. You have something else that you have to juggle, which is, being present in your relationship as well. So the number 3 thing that you need to do as you are making peace with being single is find happiness in other places. We talk so much on social media about decentering men, and all of that is great. Like, I totally agree that you should decenter men. You can check out previous episodes of this podcast. I've done plenty of discussion on that. You may find it if you're watching this on YouTube as opposed to listening to the podcast. Um, and last week we talked about the fact that this podcast, the name has changed from Confidently Cherished to Christianish. And I did a whole episode on why the name changed. But again, if you're watching this on YouTube, then you need to look under Confidently Cherished to find previous episodes of this podcast. So Finding happiness in other things is remembering that our source should never be a romantic partner. You know, my grandmother used to always say to me, "God bless the girl who's got her on." And I used to always think that that was just talking about money. You know, make sure that before you get married, you are financially good, and that after you get married, you have some money because you just never know what can happen. And while, yes, it is very true for money, you wanna make sure that it is also true when it comes to, making sure that you have your own hobbies and interests, back to, that whole self-discovery, and that you also have happiness in your other relationships, your relationship with God, your relationship with family, your relationship with friends. Understanding that having a romantic partner is supposed to add to the happiness that you already have. You know, a man is not supposed to be your complete happiness, because if you allow a man to be your complete happiness, anything can happen. That relationship could end, he could leave. God forbid, you could be in a happy, fulfilling, great, perfect marriage and the person that you're with passes away for some reason. And also, putting all of your hopes, your dreams, and your happiness in one person is making another person your God, and we never want to do that. The fourth thing that you need to consider in order to make peace with being single is to reimagine what it means to be lonely. And I say that in quotes because there has been a lot of psychology research lately on the loneliness epidemic, and a lot of it has particularly been on men and men feeling lonely because not as many men are married or in relationships as they used to be, and how we should feel bad for these poor men because they're not getting girlfriends and therefore they're more depressed and their lives aren't as great. There's also some talk about, women and loneliness as well. The reason why people have this negative type of loneliness is because, again, they're not seeing the opportunity in being alone. Being alone gives you, again, more time to do your shadow work, to do your journaling. In fact, I have two journals that are about stopping self-sabotage and about healing from a breakup that I will make sure that I put in the description, because these can help you do the shadow work that you need to do in order to develop and be a better person for both yourself and for your future partner. And this time that you are alone, it is very much possible to be alone without being lonely. One of my favorite things to do is to travel solo. I have traveled solo all over the world, both when I was single and, yes, now that I'm married, I still travel solo because there's something about having that reflection time, something about just being a little bit selfish and being able to have some experiences to myself. Being able to do those things has made me a stronger person, has made me a more independent person. It also makes me more appreciative of my husband when I get home. And because of that, it makes me, when I am home, a happier and more present wife. So taking your single season and, again, thinking about what it means to be alone without being lonely is going to do wonders for your self-esteem, for your confidence. It's going to give you more stories, and those things are going to make you more attractive so that when you are out in the dating pool and you are seeking a relationship, you will have a better chance of finding a great partner. Finally, when it comes to making peace with being single, again, this is a time to enjoy your freedom. And I want to be careful in saying that because there can be a lot of negative connotations about getting married and being in a relationship. You will hear particularly men talking about the old ball and chain and not being able to do anything now that they're in a relationship. The thing is that your single season is preparation for your married partnered season. And the things that you establish in your single season, you know, you have to set that foundation to be truly ready to be in a relationship. And part of that is independence and freedom. Again, as a woman, God bless the girl who has her own. So, having the freedom right now as a single woman to do things like take a second job, work overtime, have extra money, this way you can go into marriage knowing that you are financially sound and knowing that no matter what happens, you are good and taken care of because you can take care of yourself. Knowing that you have the freedom to, again, explore and do things like travel more because yes, I still travel while I'm married, but I don't have as much time now to travel as I did when I was single. So being able to get through some of your bucket list experiences before you take that next step in life of getting married and even just having the freedom of coming and going and not checking in with another person. Like it is two things can be true at once, right? So I love being married and I love having a person who is concerned about me and who I check in with and who checks in with me. At the same time, there's also freedom in not having that person around and not having to do that. And talking about my first point, gratitude, is being able to appreciate both seasons, right? Is being able to appreciate your single season and having this time and this space to, have that freedom, not have to check in with anyone, not feel responsible towards anyone else. And then it's being able to get married and be in a relationship and enjoying the comfort and the safety and the consistency in having someone that you check in with. I had a podcast episode, if you go back 2 episodes, with Selena Amadovar. She is also a fellow Christian dating coach. And she and I talked a lot about that in the episode about being able to make the most of your single season and how that is one of the biggest regrets that I see women, particularly Christian women who are trying to do the quote unquote good thing of hurrying up and finding a husband and doing it young. It's one of the biggest regrets that I see these women often have is even if they love their husband, even if they love their children, they wish that they had spent a little bit more time in their single season or they wish that the time that they spent single, they had been more intentional about enjoying it and getting things done. So you have that opportunity right now. So let me know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, any place where you're listening to podcasts, come over to the YouTube video and let me know in the comments, what are you going to do to make the most of your single season while you also work on your goals towards being in a relationship? I will talk to you soon. Love you so much. And please, this podcast now has a new name, Christianish, and, new feel, new branding. So I would love to get it out to as many people as possible. If you enjoyed this episode, if you learned something from it, then please take the time to leave a good review on iTunes so that Apple will share it with others. Or again, comment on YouTube so that YouTube's algorithm shares it with others. I will talk to you soon. Love you so much. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.